Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. This is Mohammed speaking. I'm an independent agriculture consultant. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with with you some insight, and I really like to discuss with you about onion production from planting and fertilizer to water management and nutritional cycles. I know most of you already have a solid experience with onions and you are the professional in your field, but as well as we all know, there are always room to learn more. Hopefully, this session will highlight a few useful points to clarify some challenges that you are faced. So, this is really not a monologue. So, I like to have a dialogue. So, I would like to jump in anytime that I would like you to jump in anytime that you think is necessary. And if you got any question, any suggestion, or any different experience, I would like to hear from you. And let's make it open and engagement discussion. Okay, so onions are a very tricky crop. You might pass a beautiful field and think, wow, this is easy. I want to plant onions too. But once you start, really sets in. You're faced with all sorts of challenges: poor germination, uneven growth, pale or burnt leaves, delayed bulb initiation, or sometimes early or sometimes late top falls, and double centers, many different disorders, thick or thin necks, and it gets really frustrating. And sometimes the farmers even plow the field and say, "Ah, forget onions, back to the cabbages." But actually, onions can be easy if you understand fertilizers, irrigation, pest and disease, and timing. And the bonus has got it's a lot like a low labor cost, so fewer pest problems. So you don't have diamondback moth, you don't have tuta absoluta, you don't have tuber moth, you don't have many different strange disease, phytophthora, which always challenge you. Or if you don't have really problem with the scab or any arena, those kind of things, so it doesn't really go away from your soil. So it's much easier to manage. So that's a bonus. In this presentation, I would like to go through some of the common physiological disorders, and also we want to go through the fertilization program and the management of that. So how we can get to the onion fertilizer program easier in order to have a good yield. So, in onions, each nutrient has the effect and really impact in plant growth. Obviously, some nutrients are more critical, like nitrogen, like potassium, like calcium, like sulfur, like magnesium. They are really critical. And as you see on the chart, it's important, and you can see the function of each one of them. And you just look at the nitrogen, for example, how effective nitrogen can be, the less amount of, or excess, or the good amount. So it's important to understand the level of impact of these nutrients. So let's start with nitrogen. I've got a really graph for you. This graph that shows the level of nutrients that how should be in the whole onion cycles. So as you see here, the nitrogen has to go starts early with a high level of nitrogen. We have to boost the nitrogen with a good amount to improve the leaf size, to have a nice growth, root development, and but in the week 9 to 12, week 11, so we have to start dropping it. So you just need to see the nitrogen is kind of investment, it's just kind of money. So you put the money in accounts, so you increase the money in your account, actually you increase the leaf size, and you've got a nice and very heavy and a strong plant. But the moment that you invest that money, you want to use that money, so you take out that money from the bank, so which means that you cut the nitrogen from the plant. So, and then you use that money for the place that you plan to save. So where you wanted to buy a house, you wanted to buy cars, or whatever you wanted to do, so you get that money and spend it. So that amount of leaves that you created, and you got a very nice growth. Now you cut back of that nitrogen, and you force the plant to use that nitrogen into the bulb formation. So other tools that you got for enforcement, that the potassium level, so you increase the potassium level. So again, the potassium level, when increase, the plant forced to produce more bulb initiation. It's very important to understand these kind of values and when you have to increase. If you're coming with a high level of potassium or high level of calcium or anything at the beginning, so always you confuse the plant. So how the plants can balance these kind of nutrients with each other. So, and it's important to have the phosphorus level is a good level. So we always need phosphorus in the onion cycle, which not really farmers consider, that they just push the phosphorus at the beginning and they leave it out. So it's not really working like that. So you have to have the phosphorus in the whole season, and obviously the calcium. So, but the question is, specifically on nitrogen, which type of nitrogen that we need and which help the plants to grow faster and more efficiently. So the type of nitrogen also determine about the plant growth. So obviously we like ammonium at the beginning, because you don't have a strong root system. You want to push with the root strength of the root to improve the root growth, which ammonium is not mobile, it can stick to the root and grow the root development. And but eventually you need nitrate, so which you have to bring the nitrate to enforce the plant. So you can see in the graph that shows a nitrate actually get friends easier with the other cations because they're negatively charged. And when you got the calcium, when you got the boron, when you got magnesium, when you got the whatever, calcium, potassium, so they get together very nicely. But if you got the ammonium, so obviously ammonium is a positive, and those are also positively charged, so they're not really sitting next to each other very nicely. So in order to have a good amount of ammonium, so you have to push out the other cations. So you always create a competition between them. So we always prefer, and you can see on the graph and the records, that we got much better yield when you use more nitrate. So other things I want to just go through that. So as you can see, when you got that calcium nitrate, so when you got a nitrate ratio, always you got a much better growth, you got a much better the balance in the plants. But it's important to use fertilizer correctly. So not really overuse anything. Too much nitrate obviously has got also negative effects. So we have to be careful about the way that we want to use it. Okay, now let's talk about water. Water, it's a very important subject in onions, a major factor in onion success. In the early stage, onion roots are shallow, so they don't need that much water. 2 mil, 3 mil, 5 mil maximum in a week. That's enough. So slowly, when the root get developed and they get bigger, so obviously they need more water. Sometimes you have to go up to 50 mil per week. But as long as you keep that giving a good amount of water, especially in the middle of age of the cycle, so the plant feels very nice, like you are in the sitting in the hotel and everything is free. You got the lunch, dinner, breakfast. Just go and eat whatever you want. So obviously you're not really considering to buy food, save food, or do something. You just keep using it and enjoying it. So it's important to understand adding consistent good amount of water that create that feeling inside the plant. So, and then you see the plant are really growing and they don't have really issue with the number of. So it's very important to manage the plant's expectation. So because the plant can produce as much as you want. Yeah, they're saying the 10 leaves, 9 leaves, start with that amount. But as long as you're giving the good amount of water, the neck is get thicker and the leaves are get bigger. So you got that kind of situation. So, but I would suggest that in the week 11, week 9 to 11 to 12, so that's the time you have to start to giving the plant stress. Okay, now stop. There's no food anymore, so you have to look for a food. You have to keep about your generation. So you have to do something, and then you give that kind of force hand to the plant, and then the plant start to think, okay, so I think maybe I have to do some initiation, bulb initiation. So and then the plant start to um, change to the different stage, which is reproduction stage, which is the bulb initiation. The moment the bulb start to initiate, that's the time again you have to give him the good amount of water, because that's the water doesn't go to the leaf anymore, they go all to the bulbs, and then you have to have a good amount of water for the last maybe another 4 or 5 weeks. So once the top falls, and once the seal leaves begin to fall, so that's the time that you have to consider, okay, so you had enough water, so the neck is get empty, so start to falling, so now you have to cut back the water slowly, 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 and eventually you have to completely cut the water and prepare for the harvesting. So the water actually subject is quite important. So, but now, after all explanation about the fertilizer program and everything, I would like to just go through some key disorders, some common disorders that you might have the challenge with, and I'm sure that you know how to fix it. But I was just going to review and tell me if I missed any disorders that I don't maybe know about that, and you can tell me, or maybe you can come and explain to the farmers, to the people. Maybe we can learn from you. So obviously, one of the two things that are very important in this slide, and you can see, so over application of potassium affects on calcium and magnesium balance. So exactly the same things happening on the ammonium side, which are you adding too much ammonium that suppress the other nutrients. Sometimes the farmers think, okay, I can. You saw on the graph that we need um, potassium is we need it. But remember, pushing too much of that potassium suppress the calcium and magnesium, and suddenly the plant feels unsafe, and the quality is completely directly related to calcium, and you won't really see the nice and firm bulbs, which are related to the calcium, and the plants get less photosynthetic time due to lack of magnesium, obviously get yellower. So that also consider that kind of disorder from us. Other things that you're all dealing with, it's a high pH. When you see the pH is quite high, you suppress the micronutrients. So all the micronutrients, zinc, manganese, iron, whatever, what else, copper, they are out. You can see, and they are already going out and not really available. On the other side, the phosphorus also is not available. Sulfur is also not available. So you can see that sulfur maybe it's available, but you can see the phosphorus is not really available. Nitrogen start to getting less available. So and then it's a challenge for you, because then you got lots of nitrate, lots of nitrogen, but you don't see the plant effect. And then you see, what's happening? What's the problem? So and then you keep using it. You keep using it, and suddenly in maybe after you use the acid or some kind of activity happen in the soil, and the soil temperature goes, the pH goes down, and suddenly all the amount of nitrogen get available, and you're sitting with a huge nitrogen availability and excess amount in the soil. Other disorder that you can see, the double cores, two centers. So obviously that's the issue that happened in related to the varieties. Some varieties are already vulnerable, and also the balance of nutrients, or also again irrigation issues. So from my experience, that we got excess amount of water, which when you push with the water and the plant feels, wow, that's a nice growth, I need to produce more leaves, and force the plant to have another core, which have the two cores. So sometimes, sometimes that also lack of water that create that kind of stress for a plant, and the plant feels okay, so maybe we have to produce more um, flowers, maybe I have to go more. So any kind of external stress that create that. So we have to consistent giving a good amount of fertilizer, keep the fertilizer going, keep the water running. So we have to manage the plants better in order to reduce the stress. And the other things that we discussed, like a botrytis, which you keep adding water in the later stage, and then and also you got lots of nitrogen, and those water goes to the neck, and also the excess nitrogen that create empty cells. They create a very good environment for the disease to come in, and then you got that botrytis neck rot. Other things is pink root rot, which all you know, this is a kind of fusarium disease which comes from the soil. Is a fungus, soil-borne disease, can stays in the soil for many years. It's better to once you see that pink root rot happening, so you have to delay it by 5 years in rotation in order to avoid from that kind of extra infection of that disease. So and then you have to work on the soil health, you have to manage it, you have to use copper, you have to do the rotation. Or if you got any varieties that has got a resistance to it, you can use that one. So other things is that you can see in the picture is a green shoulder in onions. So the other things is also related. When you got a actually not a good population, you reduce the population in order to things to get a good size, but that sunlight that create that kind of green shoulder, or sometimes excess amount of nitrogen, over irrigation. Again, that's again about the fertilizer, and also irrigation that has got these kind of disorders. And lastly is tip burn, which is tip burn in onions you will see everywhere, but I doubt about not I I doubt if any farmers know exactly what's the issue. But from the experience, from what we did and what we saw and what we checked and did some research and realized the calcium and potassium, the moment that you got in balanced condition, when you push with the too much potassium and you kick out the calcium, or you push with the too much calcium and kick out the potassium, you got that tip burn and you got that issue with the leaves, or again water stress that also create that issue. But again, it's different from the soil from the soil condition, from the soil type, the water management. They're all related to each other. But normally, when we spray the calcium, we got normally when you got the overused potassium. When you come with a foliar spray of calcium, you will fix the problems. So, but thank you very much, guys. So it was the honor to meet you, to have a quick chat with you, and to have go through this presentation. Thank you.